Well, I'm really glad to meet you.
Okay.
I've heard a few things about you, all good things, and I've also heard that you have leukemia, but that you're in a state of remission, and that's all I know about you. So from there on,
Okay.
whatever we do is up to us. And what things do you feel you want to talk about today?
I don't know. I was sitting in the room and waiting beforehand, and I was thinking about when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I remember reading a book, I believe, and I can't recall the name of it, by Young, I think it was. And I recall when I was reading that at that time, I used to go down in the basement of my home and turn off all the lights. And in a way, that was kind of closing the outside world out and concentrating on what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be. And at 7 years old, I was into that. And today, I'm in the same position. Really, at this, trying to find out what I want to do, what I want to be. And I've learned a lot of things. I've learned a lot of things since I found out I had leukemia, which is about a year ago, this June. And learned an awful lot of things.
I'll bet. And you're going through a stage, if I understand it, where it is a little bit like what it was at 7, sort of shutting out the world or shutting yourself into a space where you're trying to figure out what it is that you want or who you are. Clearly he has rehearsed this first portion, and yet the material is of interest. Whether it's superficial or deep, I want to understand the exact meaning his experience has for him. Whether it's true or false, real or imaginary, this kind of presenting material is very common in first sessions and is to be expected and it is to be respected.
I think that I've listened for so long to other people about who I was. And I remember in 2nd grade, I was a potential credit to my race. That was one of the. I used to always wonder why I couldn't be a credit to somebody else's race also. But I think I really conditioned to be something, to be some kind of a symbol or whatever, and not really being a person. I kind of missed out on my childhood to an extent. I don't really regret it. I don't think I regret it anyway, but I've really been through a lot of changes, and I think that now, after finding out I had the leukemia, and after dealing with the leukemia in the way I did, it's just really incredible, you see. It was last June when I found out, and I proceeded to get everything in order because I was told that I had less than a year to live. And that was a trip. That was a trip, and it
was a trip into a fairly dark place, I suppose.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And on one hand, I accepted the death. At my young age, I think that I've lived long and a great deal. But that was the start of some things that really has had an effect on me today. And I'm much happier than I've ever been today. I'm much happier. But there's a lot of hurt too. There's an awful lot of hurt, and I think that I'm just beginning to realize that. Because, in being a credit to your race, in being an outstanding student, an outstanding scholar, and an outstanding football player, whatever, it leaves you little room to be.
You've been meeting other people's expectations of you, and it seems that that's what you should do. And now I guess you're really questioning that very much.
Oh yeah, tremendously, and the fun thing about it is that I'm finding out that some of the things that I think inside of me are okay, and that isn't, I feel okay, and I'm in a process of becoming okay, but I haven't worked that out. That hurt is a hard thing to deal with, and conditioning yourself to die is another thing, and you see, I didn't let my family in on that until March of this year. So it was some months before, and
carried that within.
Oh yeah, but I proceeded very meticulously to carry out a plan that where my children would live in an area that I wanted them to live, and that I was trying to control something after I died, and only when I went back this year in March to celebrate my children's birthday, and I had 4 weeks, incidentally, to live at that time. I was told on March 15th that I had 4 weeks to live. And it was really incredible because, like, for the first time I saw all of my relatives and my friends, and they were coming in, and they were very loving people, and very kind, you see. But at the same time, they were all throwing flowers on my grave, and I don't think they knew that. And as a result, I got worse and I got worse, and I took a friend back. You see, I lived out here in California. After I found out that I had leukemia, I proceeded to develop a plan to move my family out here. And we moved out in approximately November, after several trips out in the area. Trips are basically to find a doctor, and also find, in a way, some kind of a hope. You see, I have this conditioned thing about being a fighter. So on one hand, I accept death, and on the other hand, I was trying to do all I damn well could to live.
If it's going to be death, okay, you'll take it, but you're not going to take it unnecessarily.
No, not at all.
I like the way I'm being a companion to him, trying to discover just how the prospect of death seems to him. I find that important because a client needs most to be understood in the darkest portions of his experience.
You know, the thing after I was sitting in there and I was thinking, I had really conditioned myself to really get ready and find the nearest cross and crawl up on that, and I've been doing that since I was 7 years old, and I'm not sure why.
Really crucify yourself? Is that what you're saying, or to be a martyr? I'm not quite sure.
I'm not really sure, but I think the activities that I was involved in terms of transracial communication, working with groups and helping people, and I would hope very similar to what people like yourself do. Always being available for everybody all the time, and I think that's being a martyr or something,
Putting the other person first.
For sure, and instead of saying, hey, there's some time for me, because you see, I worked so hard and so long that it was just really, really difficult for me to get used to, being sick, not working, and not being in control, because I definitely was not in control. And there were a lot of things that I did that I really am not very pleased about. But, after thinking about it for just a little while or whatever, one of the things that I missed, I guess maybe from not telling people or whatever, but about I was ill, that after I told them some months later, when I had 4 weeks to live, I didn't find anybody that allowed me to be desperate, that could understand some of the things that I did and why I did them. And that brought on another guilt trip, So now I'm in the process of trying to wash all that stuff out.
Is that part of the hurt? You referred earlier to hurt, and I didn't quite understand that. I can understand the feeling of desperateness, and also I can understand how hard it would be to have no one really understand that feeling in you. I can let him feel desperate. Friends and family cannot allow this. It's important that someone can really permit it. I also go back to his earlier feeling of hurt. I wanted to get a more complete feeling for his inner world, but he, as you will see, doesn't pick up on this particular portion.
I had lost my father-in-law, and which was a terrible loss to me, and it was a loss that I never could talk to my wife or anybody else about. And I gave a lot to that family, for 7 years, I guess. And when I went back, there were just some things that happened that that showed me there wasn't very much of a connection. There wasn't very much of a connection between all of that love and whatever that I put in, and then all of a sudden, I became I became just another black person. I became just another nigger, And I think it's important to understand that my wife is white, German Irish.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And I think that's a part of that whole thing. That when we were first married, my father-in-law, we just fought tooth and nail. But then after that, we loved each other for about 6 long, good, hard years. And basically, he was my only connection. And when he died, I found that there was no support. There was absolutely no support.
And I imagine, or perhaps I catch a little bit of resentment too. You really had poured a lot of love and caring into that family and had gotten some back from him, but after his death, none of it paid off for you in any way.
For sure. Yeah, I think that, what I wanted more than anything else was just to, I guess it was love. I guess it was that mutualness, what I felt for each of them. And I thought that was not only my responsibility, but, it was very natural for me to care about people that, were very close to my wife at that time.
So it hurt not to get that love back.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't mutual.
For sure it did.
I always try to sense the feelings just below his words, and he welcomes that. I try to catch the resentment and the hurt, which he hasn't yet voiced very clearly.
And there were various things that happened in terms of what's happening back east that people were wondering why I had left. Good position and all of that kind of garbage. And because I hadn't told anybody that I had leukemia, and one thing led to another, and there were stories that needed, I think every story, every situation needs to have 2 sides, and there was only one side, and I was hurt because I didn't have my chance.
You never were heard.
Never. But at the same time, like in a way I used to feel like that I put myself in that position because no one knew what was happening inside of me. You see, because I had to take care of myself, and I had to be better than everybody else because I was always told that. You can, in a majority society, I had to be 200% better than my white counterpart or my brown counterpart or whatever. I had to do that because that's what it took to survive.
And in striving for that, one reason you really weren't heard was that you didn't dare express the person you were, the sick person you were at that time.
Oh no, I really had a fear of that. I really, I guess maybe didn't trust some things that were happening. I get maybe on a whole global level, but to entrust that kind of information to other people, and I was very uneasy about that.
Frightening. Very
uneasy about that, and I did a lot of things that I didn't really want to do because I was very desperate. I gave up my job and came out here, and I did consultant work and so forth. But I had to use a great deal of money for diagnosticians or whatever, and all kinds of little gimmicks to keep me alive. And consequently, I had to borrow money. And when I borrowed that money, I didn't borrow it in a way that would say to you, like, hey, Ted or whatever, I need, X amount of dollars, and like, because I have leukemia and so forth. I was scared to death to say that, I needed some money because of, I think I must have invented about 10 stories, and I think about it, like I felt really bad about that, and because like I had developed a professional attitude, I think, about myself, or at least a kind of I had a lot of respect of a lot of people, and and I really did have that. I don't know if that was love or caring or whatever, but it was respect. When I got involved with money, the situation with money, I had to borrow money, and I really couldn't tell, and in a way, I really wanted to tell, but I hadn't even told my wife and my family. And I said, okay, well, one thing, and I'm gonna be okay, and this money is gonna be here, and everything else like that. And I think that's a part of me that I'm not really sure that, is really acceptable, because, see, I mean, you have to be perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not acceptable even to you to do some of the things you did, and also, I gather, to live behind that facade of falsehood for quite a while. I mean, not telling anybody what the score was.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Very true.
The hurt and fear of revealing himself as ill is almost worse than the illness.
That was very difficult. That was the most difficult part, I think, of...
Mm-hmm.
I think it was one of the most difficult part of my illness. It was that, hey, I couldn't have cancer, that's like having VD and 3 times of VD at the same time. How do you tell someone, I have leukemia, I have less than a year to live or whatever, and I need some money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when people, look at the drinking glass or whatever, and, after you tell them they have cancer, and they, kind of, shy away from your drinking glass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how could you possibly let anybody know where you were physically? And one of the hardest things for a dying person is the reaction that others have to him. So when he's talking of death and dying, I feel it's highly important to be right with him, to recognize and accept his feelings.
I really don't know. I really, I've tried to debate this thing in myself for a long time, and I don't really know how I could have done anything any other way, because you see, it was my character to not, I'm always there to help other people. I wasn't there for, to say, hey, I need some nourishment right now,
That's
whatever,
right.
You
just had no experience in being the needy person that needed help and needed...
Absolutely. And even when I needed money or whatever, it was not needing money to be because of my health. It was because of maybe bad business experience or an investment or something or other. And like, for the people who trusted that kind of information or whatever, like I'm going to deal with that. I'm going to deal with that. But that's not in my character. It's never been in my character. I had to keep that image. I had to keep the image. And it cost me my family, a couple children, I guess that was the most important thing that it cost me. I think the other things are really not that important, But what it did do, what the leukemia did do, it helped me to understand that I'm just an ordinary human being like everybody else, and sometimes, like everybody has problems and so forth, but at the same time, it was my character to do that, I wouldn't tell, no, for what?
But it sounds as though the leukemia helped to really destroy the notion of you as the image.
I think it did. I think it did. It finally, at the end, it did. I used the end. The 4 weeks, when I was told I had 4 weeks to live, that was the end, at the end of the leukemia, even though I'm in remission now. I don't. You see, I haven't told you that I never went for the test and gave enormous amounts of blood. And I don't know where they were sending that blood or what they were doing with it. But I gave an extraordinary amount, but nothing was coming of that, But one of the things I did know, that if I went to the hospital, if I did what the doctor said, I'd probably die. And it's almost like, when you first become an agnostic in school or whatever, you go, like I went through all this religious training or whatever, and I said, oh, I don't think that there's a God, or that isn't really important or whatever. But then at the same time, I hold back, and every now and then give an occasional prayer, just just in case.
Play it safe.
For sure. I think that's what I was also doing in terms of with the leukemia. I really did. I had the logical end to leukemia that my uncle and my cousin had before me was to die. Was to die. And then now I think I know some things about that, though, that you don't have to die. Because it wasn't until I saw everybody throwing leaves and things on my grave that I really understood that I had the power to do that, and that by lying for money was probably worse for me than leukemia, I think.
Mm.
I don't know if that makes any sense. But
Yeah, it does.
I said it.
But somehow, what I get out of it is that being kind of false to yourself really was more of a burden to you, causes you more concern than the fact that you had leukemia.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I think this is the first time he voices a feeling he has not realized before. That's a significant point in any first interview.
And the other thing was that I was about ready to leave my children, very young, beautiful children that I brought in the world to do the same kind of thing that I was doing, to take the world on their back and change things, But now that helped me now with my kids in the sense of I don't think that I want to raise my children like that.
You don't want them to carry the kind of burden of an image that you carried.
Not at all. Not because they're part Indian, not because they're part black, or not because they're third world or whatever. They don't have to carry that burden of trying to change and always being the recipient of certain policies and things like that, and always being controlled. And never really made to feel a part, you see, because I don't know if my second grade teachers thought that they were doing me a favor by telling me I was a credit to my race or not, but they certainly didn't. I didn't feel good about it then. Oh, that's a start.
He has come to the end of his rehearsed part, and now he is in new territory. I'm comfortable with the silence, and I'm eager to see where he goes next. It's his choice.
And I remember talking to a person when I came down. I just discovered I was in remission, and I was hobbling on a cane and so forth. And the first thing I did down here was to take a motorcycle ride. Now for me that was radical. For me that was extremely radical, but it was fun, and it was one of the first fun things that I did since I was ill. Because on top of having the leukemia, I was fighting a divorce and having my property ripped away from me. And having married into a family, and a family that was a different race than I was. I learned later, as my wife told me, that she didn't know that a whole community wanted to divorce, or that they were married. And I was hurt by that too, that, how very good Christian, upstanding people can make some pretty serious judgments without knowing, the whole story.
And I catch a note of bitterness there, of feeling that they really make judgments without knowing the picture.
For sure. Well, with me, the thing that was incredible that I didn't forget about, I guess, is that to understand that, I forgot for maybe a couple years, and I'm going to oversimplify this next thing, but I forgot that I was black in that family, in that community, or whatever, you see. And then I quickly learned that...
then you were reminded all over again.
Oh, for sure. And I think that also caused a lot of bitterness or whatever. And that kind of stuff I want to get out of me. I can't deal with that, someone else's trip on me. Because I really don't hate anybody for that or whatever. And like a lot of the things I brought on myself. But at the same hand, I think I really do have a right at that time to have been desperate.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand that. I didn't really understand.
This is a real step in self-acceptance. The acceptance of himself as a desperate person.
It was just, it was so bad. It got so bad, this whole trip with leukemia and lying and things like that or whatever, that I don't know. I thought, well, if I can just get ahead a little bit and make enough money to pay up all those people or whatever, or and even my will with my insurance, I made sure that all of the people were going to be paid or whatever, but I still wasn't acceptable to me. For some reason I didn't really want to go out owing anybody or whatever, because that wouldn't be the American thing to do, I guess, at that time.
That wouldn't be living up to the standards that you've set for yourself and other people have set for you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I'm a little tired of those standards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really a little tired of those standards, and I basically think that the kind of things that me and what I'm into and what turns me on is good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know why I went into remission, you know. I have some feelings about that, you know, personal, religious, whatever. But I think a great part of that had something to do with deciding that I wanted to live.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps, it sounds like you're saying several things there, that perhaps deciding you wanted to live made a real difference, and also deciding that what you were experiencing as your needs and your wants and so on really had some validity.
Yeah. It's really good to hear you say that because I really feel that. I think I think that what I did.
It is so good to feel understood. It's releasing. It shows the value of really getting inside the client's world and understanding it and communicating that understanding to the client.
About what cancer does to a person, you know, because it really is a rotten kind of a thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about your body eating itself up and decaying, you know, and you're walking around and, you know, like a garbage can kind of a thing, you know, and nobody really even likes cancer patients. I don't think, I don't know. At least, you know, maybe that's my attitude. But I didn't seem to be very liked when I had it, but at the same time, I didn't like myself. You know, maybe, you know, I didn't like myself at all because I couldn't control it.
Yeah, the way you describe it sounds like a lot of real hatred for yourself, for your body, doing such things to you.
For sure, for sure. Would have been much more better way to go to getting shot in the head or, you know, run over by a missile or something like that. Much more dignified. But a cancer, and I didn't really see any reason for it, you know. And then again, of course, the bitterness of trying to attribute my cancer onto somebody else, you know, society, the rotten foods that I ate, whatever, you know. And that was all very destructive, in my opinion, because I didn't, at that time, I hadn't decided I really could live, and I wanted to, you know. But I was so desperate to. I had a young wife who had 2 children, and those children were of mixed heritage, living in a isolated community. What would happen to those children, you know? My phone bills went up to...
Little by little, he is experiencing his bitterness and his real desperation.
My phone bill averaged about $1,500 a month, you know, because I was so worried about the children, you know.
That was a big, heavy burden, too.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, it really was pretty heavy. It was pretty heavy.
This is the first comfortable pause. I feel he is kind of catching up with himself and with the feelings that he has voiced.